Quadratic Inequalities, Day 2. We're going to follow up from yesterday's lesson and kind of look at some word problems and maybe a little bit more complicated issues surrounding quadratic inequalities. I'd also like to introduce the calculator and how you can use the test to help the test functions to help you determine whether or not it is a solution, kind of help you with the number lines. Alright, first of all, we're going to move the numbers. Negative 2x squared plus x minus 1 is less than 0. 2 times 1 equals 2, and I'm looking for the factor pairs that will add up to 1, and so I could use 2 and 1, but I cannot get that to work out because of the negative symbols here. So this is not a factorable problem. Instead, what I'll be using is the quadratic formula. So it's going to be the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a, which is negative 4. Now it becomes clear why it was not factorable. Once you simplify, you get negative inside the radical. So we're going to bring that negative out. We're going to cancel out these negatives. A negative over negative is a positive. Therefore, it's 1 plus or minus I square root of 7 divided by 4. Because there is no real solution to this inequality, there will be no real answer that you come up with. Therefore, the answer to this particular inequality is 1 plus or minus I times the square root of 7 over 4. Let's look at one that can be solved, and we will go ahead and look at number 2. So again, we remove that 4t. So it's 4t squared plus 4t minus 9 less than 0. Again, it's not factorable, so instead what we're going to use is the quadratic formula, the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. Simplifying, we get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 160 divided by 8. Break down 160 into 10 and 16, and you've got your perfect square. So we get negative 4 plus or minus 4 square roots of 10 divided by 8. Each of the numbers on the outside of the radical are all divisible by the same number, 4. Therefore, we can reduce this fraction to be 1, 1, and 2. So this simplified becomes negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 2. Here's where we'll be using our test points in the test function of the calculator. Still, draw your number line. This turns out to be approximately negative 2.08. The other turns out to be approximately positive 1.08. I'm going to pick my test points to be negative 3, 0, and 2. And now I'm going to bring in that test function on my calculator. So you'll notice that above the math key you'll see the word test. Okay, now what we're going to do here is we're going to assign a value to the variable x, just like we would if it were a t here. So I'm going to say the number negative 3, maybe. I can get my calculator to work. Now it's gonna. Why this thing froze? Now we're gonna bring in that calculator test function. You'll see here above the math key is the word test. We'll bring that in just a minute. Before we do that, however, we need to assign a value to the variable x. So using the store key, I'm going to put in -3 store x. Once you hit enter, the calculator tells you the value of x is -3. If you ever wanted to test that, just type in x and hit enter. You'll know exactly what it is. Now I'm going to type this exact thing in, including the inequality. That's where the test key comes in. So that's going to be 4x squared plus, minus 9 is less than -4x. This is Boolean algebra, so that means a 0 is a false test and a 1 is a true test. Now how does that affect us here? That means that this problem with the number -3 for t is false, and that is why it is always good to use your calculator for this. It eliminates some errors. Plus, the redundancy is actually very simple. The only thing I need to do now is change the value of x. So 0 store x. I'll bring back the equation again by using my entry key, that second enter. That brings back your previous entries. You can also up arrow if you wish. And now that I've done this, I now know that x equals 0. Please remember that this is Boolean algebra. A 1 brings back a true result. A 0 brings back a false result. That means that t, this interval, is true. Again, because of symmetry, I know this is going to be false, but because we're testing this, I want to make sure you understand what we're looking at here. The first thing you want to do is you want to restore that value, but this time with 2. Bring back your equation and test it one more time. Remember, it's Boolean algebra, so the 0 brings back a false result. Okay? That means the interval over which this is true is between -1 plus or minus 10 divided by 2 and -1. Sorry, let's start again. That means that the interval is -1 plus minus the square root of 10 divided by 2 to -1 plus the square root of 10 divided by 2. It's parentheses and not brackets because of that. All right. Next, let's look at some word problems. The product of two consecutive integers, even integers, is 24. So that means that I do x times x plus 2 is greater than 24. Move this over to the other side, distribute, and I get x squared plus 2x minus 24 is greater than 0. Factor this to become x minus 4, and x plus 6 is greater than 0. X minus 4 equals 0. X plus 6 equals 0. X equals 4, and x equals -6. Using your number lines and your test points, you're going to get your -6 here, your +4 there. So let's use our test points of -7, 0, and 5. Once you do that, you get a false true statement here, false statement here, true statement here. That means that the interval over which this is a true statement is any consecutive even integers from -infinity to -6, or from +4 to +infinity. A stuntman will jump off a 20-meter building in an upcoming movie. All right, he's using this equation, and we need the camera to catch his stunt between 10 and 15 meters above the ground. So that means using d, distance, equaling time, we need to determine when we're going to turn on and off the camera. So we want his distance to be between 10 and 15 meters off of the ground. The time will be determined by placing that equation in between. You can either solve it this way or, as I prefer it, to set it up as two different inequalities. 20 minus 5t squared and 20 minus 5t squared is less than 15. Solving both of these, I'm going to bring the 10 and bring the 15 to the same side of the equation. So I get 0 less than 10 minus 5t squared. 5 minus 5t squared is less than 0. So that means that in this case, t squared equals 2, and in this case, t squared equals 1. Then what I'm going to do is square root both sides, and I get 1 and the square root of 2. Again, we're going to use our values here. Actually, we just need to set it up in such a way that it makes sense. So if this is the answer to time on the maximum end and this is the answer to time on the lower end, that means the camera needs to be turned on between 1 and the square root of 2 seconds, which means that it's 1 and 1.41 seconds approximately. All right, question number 5. I really like to see you guys and see how you get this one done, but I will give you some hints along the way. So let's start by determining what we're looking at here. We've got a garden that has a walkway around the edges. If you want to determine what that walkway or what the area of the large yellow circle is going to be, you're going to have to add that to its area. So that means the area of the yellow section is going to be pi r plus 4 squared. And that also means that if you just want the area of the yellow section and not the entire yellow circle, which is covered by the gray one, we are going to need to subtract the area of the gray circle from the area of the larger yellow circle. So that means you start this by writing the area of the walkway only is going to be this. Now, we also want the area of the walkway to be at most 44% of the entire garden. So that means that this has to be less than 44%, written as a decimal as 0.44, the area of the entire garden, which is the gray circle. Now, once you've done that, now you have the understanding you need in order to solve this problem. Please solve this problem. Be prepared to share your answers tomorrow during class.